focusing primarily on verses 10 through 13, but we'll read the others for context. So if you would join in with me in reading the word from the Lord. Amen. Okay, so everything's on there. I can do it from there. Verse 10 says, I rejoiced greatly in the Lord, that at last you renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. This is Paul talking to the people of Philippi. I am not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. Yet it was good of you to share in my troubles. Moreover, as you Philippians know, in the early days of your acquaintance with the gospel, when I set out from Macedonia, not one church shared with me in the matter of giving and receiving, except you only. For even when I was in Thessalonica, you sent me aid more than once when I was in need. Not that I desire your gifts. What I desire is that more be credited to your account. I have received full payment and have more than enough. I am amply supplied now that I have received from Epaphroditus the gifts you sent. They are a fragrant offering, an acceptable sacrifice pleasing to God. And my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus. To our God and Father be glory forever and ever. Amen. Amen. It deserves a hand clap. Amen. Amen. I want you to pray with me on the thing, being content in the midst of it all. Being content or contentment in the midst of it all. As time goes on, I believe that we probably all do the same thing. I certainly have. We begin to change how we think about things, how we react and respond to things. Something I've noticed about myself in the last couple of decades of my life is that my view on many things has changed dramatically. I feel like now, as I've gotten older, I'm much more well-rounded than I ever was. I have a greater tolerance and understanding on how to deal with the gray areas of our lives, those things that aren't clear-cut, do this, do that. And that has just caused my entire thinking to change. And although I continue to pursue excellence and always want the best for me, my family, and everybody who is around me, I've noticed a distinctive shift in my definition and understanding of what the best truly is. Now, to be sure, I still abhor, I don't like hatred and evil and all kinds of wrongdoing. That will never change. Amen. I cannot and will not tolerate people who use and abuse other people for their own pleasure, and also because of their own low self-esteem. I have no time for fake people, phoniness, perpetrators, folk acting like they're something that they're not. We're not supposed to do that. But although I still feel very strongly about all of this, I have noticed that it does not affect me the same way it used to. It doesn't have the same hold on me like it would years ago. I don't try to understand all things anymore, and I don't strive anymore for the material things that I used to count as important, or for the station in life that I thought I had to have. And now in these latter years of my life, I'm better able to find good in more of the little things in life, rather than looking for everything to be so big. But most importantly, I do not draw my strength from other people like I used to. My strength comes from the joy of the Lord. Amen. Like most of us, I am blessed with material comforts. I have a nice home, nice clothes, all of that. I have a family that I love, and I think they love me. Bill said he did. And Valentine, didn't he? He said it. Okay, I got witnesses. He said it. You just can't assume, right? And I have lifelong friends, quite frankly, now all over the world who I trust and who I love. I have, like all of us in here, more than a reasonable portion of my health and strength. But like you, even with all of these blessings, I still have to balance all of it with the reality that everything isn't perfect in my life. I have trials and tribulations. I have to deal with setups and setbacks. I've been betrayed, lied on, was that something? Lied on, cheated, talked about, mistreated. Oh, I get sick like everybody else. I have bad days. Oh yeah, Bill can tell you that for sure. I have health challenges, moments of despair and distress. I struggle with issues that seek to steal my joy. And I know that there will always be people who won't like me. My father told me that years ago. People who will envy me, people who will try to use me, underestimate me, misunderstand me, compete with me, deceive me, and seek to control me. I know this. But nevertheless, I also know that God called us all, each and every one of us, to a position of peace in the midst of it all. Yes, there are many things that I would like to do that I know I cannot do. There are places I desire to go that I'll never go. There are people I'd like to reach for Christ, but for some reason I will never be able to reach them. But I am learning, like Paul says in this scripture, I am learning to be content, whatever state I am in. The Apostle Paul, while in chains in a jail cell somewhere between Philippi and Rome in chapter 4, Philippians is teaching the people, and even us today, about a true walk with God on an authentic kingdom journey. Remember, we said just the other week that we all are on a journey somewhere, and Paul is instructing us on how to walk the true Christian journey, staying in our own lane, on the right road, which is that road that leads directly to God. Paul wanted the people to know, and he wants us to know today, that as we push and press through the difficulties of our lives, through the process that takes time, energy, patience, and endurance, and as we travel our journey, we must learn the art, the practice, the discipline of being content in the midst of it all. In the midst of the good of the way, the bad and the ugly. I told you it was there. The challenging, the frustrating, the difficult, the indifferent, the lukewarm, and the times of uncertainty. But also the times of extreme joy and success, blessing and abundance, happiness and tremendous favor. Paul says in verse 11, I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances, whatever is going on. You see, what Paul had come to realize is that there are very few things we can change in the short run. And so it makes no sense to worry and complain about things that we can do nothing about. Paul believed in seizing the moment regardless of our circumstances, to be a witness for God no matter what, to be on assignment, to be in position, poised and ready to serve. Oh, I believe Paul realized that there are those who have an abundance of things in their lives, but they're miserable right in the midst of all of their things. He may have even realized that there are even some of us who will ask God for help and give up before the help comes, or maybe even reject the help when it comes. But Paul might have also recognized that there are those of us who have nothing and who have to scrap and scrape to keep things afloat every day, but those same people have found a place of peace, transcends the things that material things can bring. And I believe Paul even recognized that for some of us, no amount of blessings could ever really satisfy us, because our focus might just be on the wrong things. Remember, where is your focus? Paul says that there are two ends of the spectrum. There is a place of want or need and a place of gain. A place of lack and a place of fulfillment. A place where you don't have enough and a place where you can have more than enough. Paul says in the King James Version of this scripture, I know how to be abased and I know how to abound. He's saying, I know what it's like to be brought low, humiliated, but I also know what it's like to be held in high esteem. And he says, knowing both of these conditions, I don't prefer either. I don't have a preference, Paul is saying, when I focus on the cause of Christ. They are both the same for me. I can move between being a hero to a goat. I can take a licking and keep on ticking. And I can also handle the pats on my back. I can endure the false accusations as well as the praise for a job well done. I can walk circumspectly in the world in honesty and integrity, even when the traps of deception are set all around me. Paul says back in Philippians 1, chapter 1, that for me, Paul, to live is Christ and to die is gain. Paul says, if I live in Christ because I'm committed to serving Christ no matter what. So that's good for me. But if I die, I'll be with God. That is much greater for me. Living will benefit you because God sent me here to help you, but dying will greatly benefit me even the more. Paul recognizes that true godliness with contentment is great gain. Paul knew that there is a place in God where it just doesn't matter what your conditions are, where it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, good, bad, or indifferent. There is a place of contentment that is not dependent on what you have or what you think you want or desire. We should all ask ourselves today, why am I here? Why am I here? Am I here to get success in the eyes of man? Or am I here to faithfully walk out God's call in my life? Am I here to erect a permanent structure for myself? Or am I just passing through this place, pitching tents wherever I go, where I see a need, and I seek to meet that need? Why am I here? To be sure, many of us might not really understand what spiritual contentment is really all about. Some might think that being content means accepting whatever comes your way, to give up hope and expectations of things ever getting better for us, or for those who are around us, and doing nothing to make things happen in our lives. But I can assure you that's not what it means. Some might believe that content people have stopped growing. They become stagnant, boring, and on their way to becoming useless. But that's not what Paul means. Or worse yet, some might think Paul is saying that even if you're living in sin, living in rebellion to God, going against everything God has instructed you to do, doing whatever you want to do and not worrying about the repercussions. Some might think Paul means that even if you're in that state, you should be content. But I can assure you, that's not what he means. To be content does mean to be satisfied. To have an attitude that says, I will be satisfied with what God has given me. Yeah, it is to find peace with the cards that have been dealt you, with things the way they are in the moment, the way God has allowed them to be in that season. Contentment is the ability to rise above the facts of what our eyes can see and rest in a new reality of what things are truly designed and intended to be. The sum total of who we are is not based on what has happened to us or even what is happening right now. We are much more than our circumstances. And we are called to persevere, to endure hardship, to trust, believe, press forward toward the mark, and never give up on God as we journey to our destiny. That's why when people say, I'm a divorced woman or I'm a divorced man, my response is, that means you're not married, right? That's your current state. To people who've been abused in childhood or as an adult, you're not a sexually abused child or adult. You're a person who was abused, but who survived that trauma and undoubtedly grew as a result. To be content says that I recognize how things look right now. I'm not sure when and if these things will change. I may want desperately for them to change, and I've done all I can to make things better. But I'm surrendering my will. And I'm believing in something greater in God that guarantees me peace and joy, even in the midst of it all. Oh, no matter what my circumstances are, I'm after God's peace and joy. Whether I'm sitting comfortably in a mansion or cramped up in a little old shack, I'm looking for peace. I'm seeking God's joy. The joy that the world can't give and the world can't take away. Yeah, the peace that surpasses all of my understanding. And because of the liberating power of the gospel of Jesus Christ, all of us can find this peace and joy in something greater than our current surroundings and circumstances. Or better yet, we can find peace in our current space in life. As a church family, we have to be content with whatever God chooses to do with this congregation. And we can't make the mistake of trying to compare or to imitate what any other church might be doing, because one size does not fit all. We have to be able to worship and serve with the same vigor, passion, commitment, and excitement, whether we have 400 people jammed into the sanctuary or only 2 or 3. And then we can say whether we got sound or electricity or choir or Lord have mercy. Just the point I was about to get mad, God said, contentment. Yes, sir. We've got to be the kinds of disciples, the learners, that don't just get excited when we think other people are excited about our church, but we have to bring the excitement to and in and through our church. Contentment dictates that we accept whatever circumstances God allows us to experience. Of course, as that means that we need to stay agile, movable, flexible, adaptable. We adjust, we expand, and we engage whatever the situation is. It's like this says, a contented heart is a calm sea. Not in spite of or without storm, but in the midst of all storms. Contentment requires that we accept one another unconditionally, even though that might be difficult at times. But it also requires that we continue to work to improve ourselves, along with the lives of others we meet. In this text, Paul is primarily speaking to the people of Philippi about their financial support of him, but he's also speaking of the emotional support. Paul says to the people of Philippi, I'm really not trying to appeal to you based on a need I have that is financial in nature. I have what I need to do what I need to do. Sure, Paul says, I appreciate, don't get me wrong, I appreciate what you've done for me. I got home training. I know how to thank you for what you did for me. But I am not hanging my hat on anything that you can do for me. Because just like you can do it, you can take it from me. Paul knew that the ministry God birthed in him was dependent on God's grace and mercy. Amen. As it is for each one of us. Sure, the ministry needs to run on money, needs money to run, resources and the gifts of those who are called to ministry. And God gets to us what we need, often through other people. But Paul let them know, lest they should confuse their role in his life for what God was doing in his life, he lets them know that as they gave to him and helped him in the work that he does in the ministry, his joy comes in knowing that they, the givers, might realize the benefit that one receives when they line up with God's plan. You see, Paul had the luxury, don't miss this, because he was content in whatever state he was in, he had the luxury of caring about the benefits that would come to someone else. Because he wasn't so tied up worrying about the benefits that are coming to him. He was content and on assignment for the Lord. Here in these verses 17 through 19, that same chapter, he says, not that I desire your gifts. What I desire is that you receive more. More is credited to your account. I have received full payment and I have more than enough. I am amply supplied. Now that I have received from Epaphroditus the gifts you sent, they are a fragrant offering, an acceptable sacrifice, pleasing to God. And my God shall supply all your needs according to his riches in glory. To be sure, God says that the people who are taught must share with the teacher. God says that those who bring the gospel are to receive double honor and that their needs are to be met. God also says that we are to bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there might be meat in mine house, saith the Lord. But that in doing that and being obedient to God's call with our financial means, God will open up the windows of heaven and pour us out a blessing that we shall not have room enough to receive. Paul says, I rejoice in what you have done for me, because I know that in doing it, you have done well for yourself. I know that you were obedient, and you have made an investment in an account that will pay off to you with dividends. Nevertheless, Paul declares, I've got to stay focused, and so do you. I've got to fulfill the call God has put on my life, on our lives, no matter what. And the call of God is not dependent on how much money I have, how much I'm able to give, what kind of house I live in, what kind of car I drive, or you can tick off the list. It is greater than all of that. Those things are for our personal comfort. Those are for our flesh. But this call of God on our life is for the kingdom. It is to help in saving lost souls. It is to help in making sure that someone who has lost their way and might be headed toward hell might be saved from eternal damnation. Just like we say we've been. That's what's most important, I hear Paul saying. Paul has learned that whatever he encounters, whatever setbacks and setups he has to endure, whatever highs or lows, he's learned to treat them all the same way, to be satisfied, to be content, whatever state he is in. One of our former neighbors back in Plant City in Florida years ago, lost her daughter, her young daughter. It was a tragic death, and she was about 6. She was a beautiful young angel, called her. That's her name, the meaning of her name. A couple of weeks after, I know I shared this at one point, but a couple of weeks after her death, and after the funeral, I went for a walk with this mother, our neighbor, and just to see how she was doing, and she was talking to me about the peace that God had given her that she could not understand. She reflected on God's provision all throughout their life. They were blessed with a lot of things, and she reflected on that, and this angel of a child that they had, who was, by the way, very wise beyond her years. I remember when I first met her, the conversation she had with me as a 6-year-old would blow you away. She was 5 then, actually, when I met her. But she mentioned that she was in a place of contentment. And right then, I remember this scripture. It's like whatever state, talk about being abased. I remember when she called and said that her baby had died. I remember what it did to me, and it wasn't my baby, so I can imagine. But 2 weeks after, she said she had a peace and she couldn't understand why. Not that it didn't hurt her, that her baby was gone, and not that she won't miss her forever. But God had miraculously, through God's amazing power, given her a peace, which surpassed her understanding, and mine too. Amen. Peace she couldn't understand, but she knew it was real. And that was what was keeping her, and I'm sure continues to keep her. True contentment can be found in the belly of our brokenness and in the dungeons of our despair. But it can also be found in the heights of our happiness and the pinnacles of our success. Contentment is developed, it is experienced, it is actualized right in the middle of some of the most difficult experiences we have. But it also emerges out of our places and times of abundance. But contentment is a decision. It is an act of our will. It is a choice that we make. It is wanting what we have and not having what we want. We can choose to live in despair, or we can choose life, leaning and depending on God. We decide that we will surrender ourselves totally and fully unto God in the midst of our circumstances. And then we rest in the arms of a loving, secure, and all-sufficient God, knowing that, as Paul says there in verse 13, I can do all things. That thing come right back together, wrap up real nice. I can do all things through him, through Christ, who strengthens me. Jesus demonstrated his level of contentment when he said at the Garden of Gethsemane, before he was crucified, Father, let this cup pass from me. But then he quickly said, but not my will, but thy will be done. He wasn't happy with the circumstances, but he was satisfied. He was content. He wasn't happy with the call on his life at that time and the sacrifice he knew he had to make, but he was satisfied with the sacrifice he was making because he knew that greater things were happening. And he could be a part of that. We don't have to have all the answers. We don't always need to know and understand why. All we're called to do is trust in the one who has the answer and is the answer.
Amen.
Place our hope and our trust in God. That is where true contentment comes. And as the scripture ends, to our God and Father, be glory forever and ever. And the saints of God said, Amen. Amen. I want you to stand and to read together with me the Serenity Prayer. To pray together with me, I should say. The Serenity Prayer. Many people only know the first few lines, but the real depth of it comes through the entire prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as the pathway to peace, taking, as he did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever in the next.